Welcome, everyone, to the Chris Perish Podcast, episode 27. Just want to give a good shout out to the band Downstate for that amazing theme song. Thank you so much. And then also want to give a thanks to our affiliate, Rogue Energy. So you go to rogueenergy.com and you use the promo code PERISH, PERISH, to save your 10% off that order, off all orders. And then also a good shout out to our friends of the channel, Turnbuckle Studios, where you can watch the Raw Patrol every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then Turnbuckle Talk at 8:05 every Tuesday with guest hosts Carl Carafell and Chris Best. But once again, we are joined by the host, the creator of the Worst Sports Channel, Mr. Jack Lucenay. Jack, thank you so much for coming back to the Chris Perish Podcast.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed my time so much last episode. I had to come back this episode because 27 is my lucky number.
See, there you go. It's like I knew that. I did not know that. I learned something. So,
and I just dropped for anyone out there listening. Yesterday we did a preview, and when I say we, I mean me and the voices in my head. We did a preview of Clash at the Castle, which will be coming up next week. So we're excited about that, and we'll probably do a review after the show next week. So you can go check out. Just search Jack Lucenay, and you'll find my channel.
Yeah. We'll put up the ticker momentarily. But before we go anything, what are the matches that you're personally looking forward to for Clash at the Castle?
For Clash, I mean, Sami Zayn and Chad Gable. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm predicting that Chad Gable is going to get that Intercontinental Championship and finally get his run with it. So I'm super excited about that. I'm also intrigued to kind of see how they're going to handle Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest. I kind of have my theories that, CM Punk, is going to try and cost Drew McIntyre the title. And I think the only thing that messes it up is actually the rest of the Judgment Day members for Damian Priest, further creating that rift in that group. And I think Drew does get out of there with the title so that he can face CM Punk for the title at SummerSlam. And I also just want to shout out Piper Niven. Also will be fighting in her hometown. And I'm actually predicting and hoping that she pulls off an upset win and gets a little run with the title. Because I don't think Bayley needs to hold it for like months on end. And I mean, frankly, it's been kind of forgettable, her title run, to be perfectly honest. But again, I don't see the need to have it on her for like a long time. I think Piper Niven would be like a nice, fresh character in the women's scene to get a title run, especially with the work they're doing with Chelsea Green.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of spitball off that one, if you're gonna have Piper Niven with somebody in her corner and you don't have an advantage for Piper Niven, then I think you're doing a disservice to the Chelsea Green character being a factor in anything. I kind of said something very similar to, if you remember back when Bayley was going up against Bianca Belair for the title, and it very much had like no rules going into that match, but then Bianca still won, and it really opened my eyes to be like, okay, what's the point of damage control if they're not really helping Bayley win? Like, this was almost a slam dunk opportunity to switch the title, and it didn't, like you said, doesn't have to be for very long, but enough just to make the stable at least recognizable in that situation. We got our good friend Chris Best coming in saying good afternoon, gentlemen. So we just want to say good afternoon. Also want to just let everybody know that below we have the ticker for all the socials that Jack Lucenay have. So if you want to check out and support the Worst Sports Channel, please do so on those below links. So you did mention that you want to see Chad Gable defeat Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship. You would then be pegging Chad Gable to be re-upping his contract with the WWE, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain guys and it's a little bit of a tease. We can talk about him later with Ricochet and what's going on with him. But there's certain guys that I feel like have the ability to kind of move around and go to the indie scene and come back. And other guys I really view as like WWE lifers in a sense. And I do think Chad Gable is the kind of guy that I don't see why he wouldn't re-sign with the WWE. And I think they're gonna. It's less about the contract stuff to me and more about they really need to validate the heel run and really to be able to tell the story. I think you need to put the Intercontinental Championship on him and really give him that even bigger head now and kind of even turning the screws more on Otis, who's getting over with the crowd again, and to continue that story. Like I feel like you're spinning wheels if Chad just loses again because Otis can't come through for him and whatever. It feels like we've gotten away from that kind of storytelling for the most part, to be honest. I do think they're going to put the title on Gable. And in the back end, we kind of saw this with the Drew McIntyre stuff as well, where they were teasing whether or not he was going to re-sign. And that one to me was more viable of Drew's been on the independent scene before he can make a name for himself. This would be totally like, Chad going into complete like new waters, basically.
Yeah, and I find like just nowadays with the power of social media, we hear so much about the back and forth of like the narratives of whether or not said person is going to leave, what anybody is going to do, and how they should be all elite. Well, one, it's really funny to me to see all elite photos with WWE names. Like people, if Becky Lynch is to leave, she will not be Becky Lynch in AEW. Be a little bit smarter when you're putting up those all elite things. It'd be Rebecca Quinn, not Becky Lynch. Just understand that. Yeah. If you want to do the clickbait, at least do it right. But no, I mean, I'm 100% agreeing with you. I think Chad Gable is primed to re-up his contract at WWE. He just seems to make too much sense there, especially when you look at the stories he has going on with the Alpha Academy, with the potential feud with Otis. Then you're looking in the background. Does he have something going on with the Creed brothers? I even go one step further and be like, if he doesn't win the Intercontinental title, if I was him, I'd ask for a trade to SmackDown, and I think that'd be a perfect heel to go up against Cody Rhodes for that world championship. But yeah, I think there's so much for Chad Gable. I think the guy is a future world champion. I don't think necessarily he's going to be a Roman Reigns world champion, but I do think he's going to be a closer to a Jack Swagger type of champion. He very well can be that kind of guy in my eyes. But we did talk about our touch up Ricochet, and I just want to kind of go there a little bit. And we do know that Ricochet has informed the WWE, as PW Insider reported, that he is.
We don't actually know that. I just want to cut in and say, first of all, wrestling reporting is the biggest pile of Jurassic Park.
That's why I'm throwing them under the bus, so people don't get mad at me. Yeah, PW Insider reported yesterday that Ricochet has informed WWE he is not going to extend his contract when it expires this summer. Now, obviously, we're not a part of that negotiation. We don't know for sure if that's what's going on. It has been reported by multiple places on online, so one can assume that this is accurate information. But the one thing we don't know is if it's true or not, because, well, until he leaves, we don't know if he's going to leave. That's really the thing. But if we are living in a world where Ricochet is on borrowed time with WWE, a strong indication of that would be him dropping the Speed title to Andrade after SmackDown on Friday. If Ricochet is to leave WWE, I would assume he's going straight to AEW to work a program with Will Ospreay. Is that what you would assume as well, or what would you think Ricochet would do if he was to leave WWE?
Yeah, so it presents obvious as an obvious path. I think you have contrasting situations with Ricochet and Chad Gable, which I think is very interesting. You look at a guy like a Chad Gable, who I think is in a similar position as a Ricochet. I think they're both viewed similarly as like, yeah, they could be world champion, but they're definitely not viewed at that Roman Reigns, even Cody Rhodes level of a guy that's going to carry the company on their backs. So as much as they are extremely good talents, they're also guys you can live without. And I think you look at a guy like Ricochet, especially, you know, his time's been very interesting where, you know, you look at a guy like, again, going back to Chad Gable, he's featured in a program weekly that's basically been one of the highlights of the show for a while now. And he's been featured prominently in that upper echelon, like Intercontinental Championship scene, whereas like Ricochet really passed that title off to Gunther, kind of had a little quick thing, and then, you know, never really had any sustained momentum. He kind of had that program with Logan Paul again. He's had a lot of flash in the pans, but nothing really sustained in his time in WWE. So I could understand a guy like him who really views himself, I think, even more so than a Chad Gable, because Chad strikes me as the type of guy who would view himself as a working man's wrestler, the kind of guy who's kind of more of like a cog in the machine. I don't think Chad Gable, as much as he is probably very confident in his abilities, walks in and thinks of himself as like The Rock or Hulk Hogan. I think Ricochet has a little bit of that, though. And I think, you know, you look at his time on the independent circuit before he came into WWE and the way he was treated in NXT, I would argue that his main event run has been disappointing. And I think you could say that both personally and externally, subjectively, like as a fan. And so for him to, and let's just assume again, we are making a big assumption, because the thing I hate about, even when you say multiple sources, when it's wrestling journalism in regards to WWE, it's like one source gets a thing and then all the other sources or all the other companies basically just copy whatever that one company. And so usually it's like PW Insider and Wrestling Observer Newsletter are like the two big ones, where it's like they say something and then 50 other companies parrot it and suddenly it's news. Even though a lot of the times it's like subjective opinions being thrown around or like loose gossip. So again, just let's assume that Ricochet has said, yeah, you know, come when my contract's up, I'm out of here. Yeah, I think the most obvious path is he's going to go to AEW, and immediately, you know, I don't think they're going to go right into the Will Ospreay program, but they're definitely going to get to it sooner probably rather than later. Like, it's not going to be his first feud, but it won't be like 10 feuds in. It's going to be probably like, I would assume, his second or third feud once he gets to AEW. And then we're going to get those awesome ninja matches in AEW of Ricochet versus Will Ospreay. The only other big swerve that I could maybe see that would be crazy would be if somehow Ricochet leaving was going to be so that kind of like like if they were going to swerve him for WWE, like they put out that, yeah, his contract's up, and you know Ricochet has said that he's not gonna be coming back, and then you know, maybe you take a couple weeks or a month off, and then all of a sudden Prince Puma is in WWE. That's kind of the only big swerve I could see, other than, hey, he's just actually leaving, if the news is presumably real.
Yeah, and I believe he also owns the trademark to Ricochet. So if he wants to use Ricochet outside of WWE, I do believe he is available to. So that's a little food for thought. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he was to leave. I wouldn't be shocked if he was to stay. His fiance works in WWE, and I think that's something where we're going to get absolutely sick and tired of hearing, is if Ricochet does leave, oh, what happens to Samantha Irvin? It's like, well, look at Rhea, look at Buddy, look at Zelina, and look at Malachi. It's very possible people in a relationship can work in different places, people. It doesn't have to always be happy-go-lucky life. Plus, it might even be a happier life by working in other places because people in a relationship also want different things and they just come together to get it done. That's the beauty of a relationship.
And she's a ring announcer, so it's not the same thing as like being two in-ring competitors. Like,
no.
She could very much like, and they're adults. Like, she could very much just maintain her job as the ring announcer for WWE, even if Ricochet were to leave the company.
Yeah, it's not going to affect anything. But what is going to affect a lot of things is tonight, where the NXT brand informs you that they are kicking ass once again as they bring you Battleground, where Jordan Grace, the TNA Knockout Women's Champion, goes up against Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship, which all eyes have to be on this match. I would be completely shocked if it's not the main event. But what are your thoughts going in about Jordan Grace possibly becoming NXT Women's Champion?
So I talked a little bit about this on my show yesterday. That obviously I think it's hilarious actually that WWE is already doing Forbidden Door, in my opinion, better than AEW has done Forbidden Door. By bringing in Jordan Grace with the TNA Women's Knockout title, and potentially, I think she is going to win the NXT Women's title. I think she's going to be a double champion. It makes so much sense. And she even put out the shirt, the NXTNA shirt, that I think was so clever. So it's like, yeah, they're already super behind this. She's absolute money. As much as I love Roxanne Perez, I think it just makes too much sense. And you kind of have like, me personally, like I would be remiss to not put like the belt on her. I think it would be a huge missed opportunity. And the only way I see it happening is some kind of fuckery with some kind of cheatery with
it's all right.
cheating or something.
I just put the explicit on. It's fine. You can drop a bomb if you wanted to.
You know what? We're at 1. Last time on your show, I hit 2. So let's try and keep it at 1. Let's try and stay under so that we do better than last time. I'm real bad for it. My apologies, though. But I just really think Jordan Grace, like the only way is like some chicanery, some shenanigans, some kerfuffles outside of the ring to protect her. But I think they should just put the strap on her and double strap her.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now Jordan Grace is bringing you ratings. She's bringing you more eyes to the product. She's going on TNA shows talking about NXT, and she's right now the face of this crossover between TNA and WWE. And I think the one thing that you can appreciate with this crossover is that it's not being overdone. It's not benefiting just one company, like you said about the AEW TNA AEW and Impact. If I'm being politically correct. But I think now a lot of people are waiting to see if WWE talent are going to go to TNA. And if that's the case, it's only going to drive the buy rate up against All Odds coming up in Chicago even more so. So I think Jordan Grace winning that championship just puts more eyes on the shows and bringing more eyes to the buy rates. And I think that's just smart business. And I think that's the one thing that really was lost during the Impact and AEW crossover.
I just connected some dots. What if, just going back quickly to the Ricochet thing, what if Ricochet announcing that he's leaving WWE so he can show up in TNA and be a part of their roster, right? Like, and he suddenly like wins the TNA championship off of Moose. Because like right now, I would argue that Jordan Grace is the face of TNA, even above like the TNA, like the heavyweight championship. Like I would argue Jordan Grace is like the face of TNA.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. She is definitely the biggest star in TNA right now. I think Moose is probably the number 2 if you're not looking at 1A, 1B. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, but it would be interesting if we start to see that kind of, again, that chicanery, because, you know, that's part of the problem of, you know, I keep laying it on wrestling journalism, but it's because kind of the way that they have done kayfabe in the last couple of years, especially, has been to basically just feed misinformation to the wrestling journalists because, like, they're not beholden to anything. And they just get them to regurgitate, you know, storylines as opposed to news, and then we all buy into it. You know, I mean, I would say a lot of marks buy into it, and then next thing you know, it's like, oh, it was all a swerve.
And speaking of people that like we did not really expect to be, I mean, we knew he was probably done with AEW. We just never saw him making his impact in NXT. But that's the man that's challenging Trick Williams for the NXT Heavyweight Championship, and that is all ego Ethan Page. And I think this is another big moment of, okay, I believe that the right move here is putting that championship on Ethan Page. And this is not a Canadian bias. I think if you really want to squeeze out the intrigue on the Trick Williams character, he needs to chase and have a giant payoff like he did with Carmelo Hayes. And I think sometimes if you just kind of give him the old little fuckery, I think it makes you care about that a little bit more. And I also have a weird feeling that maybe Lash Legend and Ethan Page could be working together to go after, kind of put that knife in the back of Trick Williams. But your thoughts on the Trick Williams, Ethan Page NXT Championship match?
So, I mean, my head disagrees, and I think they're just going to go with Trick Williams here. But my heart really enjoyed that storyline that you just put together. I've been kind of lamenting just in general super long title runs in WWE, especially, of like, it just feels like every title run now has to last like a minimum of 3 months. Like, can we just go back to the days of, you know, I miss 30-day title reigns like so bad. I miss flipping titles randomly on a random NXT episode or a random Raw or SmackDown. Like I miss, you know, so much of what made the title scenes unpredictable because it's gotten to the point where it's like even the mid-tier titles are so buttoned up. Again, like that's part of why I said I want to see Chad Gable win that title. I want to see Piper Niven win the women's. I don't need to see Sami Zayn carry it for a year. I love Sami Zayn, but he's already had it for several months now, and I don't see anything else that he needs to get out of this Intercontinental Championship run. I don't see anything else that Bayley needs to get out of this championship run. And frankly, I don't really see what else Trick Williams is going to get out of his title run, except that eventually, no matter who you are, it's like that line from Ted, the movie Ted, where it's like, no matter how big you are in this world, even if you're Frankie Muniz or Justin Bieber, just eventually nobody cares. It's like, no matter how big you are in wrestling, eventually you keep pushing it, nobody cares. Hulk Hogan turned heel for a reason. So I'm not saying Trick Williams is there yet, but you feed him Ethan Page, you feed him like, you know, 4 or 5 more guys, you're going to get there. That's the way you keep it fresh is, like you said, I would love to see them just flip it on Ethan and let Trick go after him and get it back and become a 2-time NXT champion. That's a thing that's so forgotten too nowadays. It's like we're never going to see a Ric Flair or a John Cena or a Triple H or a Randy Orton ever again, it feels like. Because these guys carry the title forever. Like even Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is what? Like a 6 or 7 time champion, I feel like. Roman would have to to win 7 more championships just to get to like Randy. You know what I'm saying? Like these, you're never gonna get the 10-time, 12-time, 14-time, 16-time world champions again because those guys had to lose the title 15 times. That's what everybody forgets.
And no, you make a good point. I think too, especially when we were given a 3-year title reign with Roman Reigns, the 666 days of the Intercontinental title with Gunther, and then he also had the longest title reign with the New Day or with the Usos after they defeated the New Day. Yeah, it gets a little worn out, and now we're looking at like Logan Paul is over 100 and some odd days with the title, and really he hasn't done much of relevancy of on screen. I'll say that on screen in WWE programming with that championship. But the one thing that I will say, the one thing I do like about Sami Zayn is that if you brought in guys and he can have those feuds, you're immediately invested on that, just like a Chad Gable. So I think those two guys are the perfect two people to replace you from a long title reign with Gunther over that title. But eventually you do have to move one out and bring somebody else in. And I do think it makes a little bit more of a intrigue storyline if you're going to if you got to make that babyface run a little bit more hurdles before he gets to that finish line. We just saw like how much it actually did help Cody Rhodes when he lost at WrestleMania 39. And I do think like the more you kind of put the hurdles in the way of a Trick Williams, the more you'll appreciate his victory. Look at Daniel Bryan, prime example. That run spoke for itself on why, if done right, that story belongs in pro wrestling. And yeah, I do think with Trick Williams' popularity, I don't think the title really represents anything more. But I think the chase will, and that's why I do believe maybe if you want to go in, he feels he's fighting alone. It's his time now to also maybe find backup. Maybe it's a Chase University, but at the same time, now you're elevating more guys into that scene, which is exactly what I love about NXT in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally agree with you. I just don't want to see every single title run last 100+ days.
Yeah. And I love the time where, like, you go back to Christian where you had the title for 5 days, and people nowadays are still saying, "Oh yeah, it's the one title reign I wish was longer." I'm like, yeah, but you know what? You're talking about it. You don't always talk about the time where Charlotte Flair held the title for 208 days before she lost it. You don't care because the title reign didn't mean anything, but the 5 days Christian had it meant something to you, and that's why you still talk about it to present day. So yeah, no, I think
I miss too is again just like the idea that you would have someone win it on a pay-per-view and flip it back, to somebody else 5 days later. Like that stuff never happens anymore.
Yeah. And
it's even you mentioned Logan Paul with the U.S. title. It's like that's what happens more often now. Is someone gets a title and they hold it hostage for like a year or whatever. And it's like I get that he's doing all this stuff outside of the WWE, but it's like the U.S. title, specifically like for so long. You talk about a working man, so they had the U.S. Open Challenge. Like multiple guys tried doing that gimmick, basically, right? I always thought it would be funny if they did again, like have the guy win the title and then try to do the open challenge and lose it on the first one. Like they never do stuff like that, and it's like that kind of booking. I feel like is old school nowadays, and they don't really do stuff like that anymore.
Yeah, I think the 2 times I remember somebody winning a title and lost it right away. I know Kane won the title in a first blood match against Steve Austin and lost it to him the next night on Raw. And then Zack Ryder won the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania and lost it the next night on Raw to The Miz when Maurice came back.
The way they did that one was funny.
Yeah. We also have our good old friend Bubba Duke coming in saying good afternoon, guys. What's up, Bubba Duke? Make sure you're checking out the Boar's Nest every Thursday. with your host Bubba and OMD. But yeah, no, it's to me, it's just that's something that, you know, if there's obviously something there with Trick Williams, and now I think you're in a position where, okay, how do we make him even bigger now, while in the same breath we have now established an Ethan Page and we made him a solid entity in our brand, instead of just, oh, you're just another guy he beat. Because I say that because I look over down and I see a guy named Lexus King, and I'm like, you know what? He's the slow burn. I get that. But when he lost his first match on his first PLE, it felt very weird, because now I'm like, okay, what is a trajectory? The really like that. What's a trajectory for Alexis King? But if now you get to put a title right on Ethan Page, I care about Ethan Page just like that, because right away he did something of value, and especially if you give him an angle, and that's the thing. It's all about the stories that you're telling with it. The title it's the shiny object on a good story. It really is.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I feel like an AEW sometimes will do it well, and then other times it goes completely by the wayside. But it's just booking stories around the title. Like, the title should be meaningful enough that it tells its own story, you know? And again, having a guy like Ethan Page come in, and you're absolutely right. Like, if you have a guy come in and treat him like a big deal and put him in a title feud right away, and then he just loses, it's like what I was saying. I think we had the conversation actually off screen, but it's like when a wrestler does like a super blow up spot and then just gets folded immediately after. Just like comes up and is just like doing the Hulk up thing, and it's like, I'm the best in the world, and then just gets immediately folded into a pin and loses. Like, that's the feeling that you get if you have a guy come in at the level of Ethan Page and just loses a match, and then, okay, well, you're gonna go, because you know he's gonna get relegated to like the North American title thing or something like that, and he gets that title first. It's like the same paint by numbers stuff every time. And that's where I'm like, I don't need every guy that comes in to go through the North American title and the tag titles and before he gets to the world. Like, just, you know, and on very rare occasions, they will bring a guy in. Like, when they brought in, at the time it was Walter, but then became Gunther. Like, they didn't mess around and have Walter win in these little like, he came in, won NXT UK championship like day one practically, and then just held it for 2 years, and then he went to main roster. That's how you treat big deals like big deals.
Yeah. And that's why I think too, when you look at a guy like Carlito, you know, he comes in his debut, he beats John Cena for that US title. And then when he gets drafted to Raw, his first night on Raw, he wins the Intercontinental Championship. Right away, you're making it known that this guy matters to your show. There's a reason why when his music hits, you should be invested, because he does something worth of value. Chris Best is coming in and saying, Yoko beat Brett for the title, only to drop it to Hogan 2 minutes later. And that is what we call great old-fashioned wrestling politics. But you didn't,
brother.
Yeah, you did mention the North American title, and on this episode of Battleground tonight that NXT is presenting, there are not one but two North American title matches. That's right, because we will see for the male North American Championship a triple threat match between Obafemi, who's defending his championship against Wesley and Joe Coffey, and I think this is going to be probably the only match where the champion, in my eyes, should retain it. But I am very much looking forward to any time Joe Coffey is on my screen, because I am a big fan of him. And then I'm also very happy that Wesley is back in the game. And that's why I don't think Ricochet leaving WWE is a huge hit, because in NXT you have a guy named Wesley. Your thoughts on this triple threat North American match?
That's kind of what I was getting at earlier when we were talking about Ricochet, of just like, as much as I love and appreciate Ricochet, and I view him as a star, like, the guys that do like the really athletic stuff, they have tons of them. And Wesley is definitely one of them. And but Obafemi is a guy. I love Obafemi. I love the way that they've presented him. I love the way that they've built him. This is exactly the kind of thing of like, again, if you're gonna have someone do the North American title run, you have them do it right the way Obafemi does it. Like in terms of if you're trying to present them as a dominant character, and I'm excited for Obafemi to actually lose this title at some point. I don't know. I don't think this is the match. I think the only way I could really see, I could see Wesley pulling off an upset just to get his title back and maybe having a blow-off singles match with Obafemi, which would be a brutal match. But Obafemi is basically, I want to see him go up to the NXT heavyweight championship scene at this point.
Yeah.
I think he's done what he can with this title run. I don't know that this is actually the one that they're going to have him lose. I think he's going to be, like you said, the one that actually defends. And going to the other one, which I think I'm even more excited about, the inaugural women's NXT North American Championship, 6-woman ladder match. I love that they are just going with the ladder match, kind of an homage to when they introduced the North American Championship once upon a time, which was Adam Cole that won that one. That's why he had the match with Ricochet after, which I watched earlier today. And then if I had to predict who, I have kind of a sneaky prediction, and then the one I want to see Miss Parker. I want to see Jada Parker win.
Before we talk too much, just so if by chance the audience does not know who's all in this, I'll just ring it off for you. You do have Kalani Jordan going up against Meechin, going up against Jada Parker, as you're saying, going up against Fallon Henley, going up against Lash Legend, and going up against Sol Ruka. That is your inaugural Women's North American Championship ladder match that will take place tonight on NXT Battleground. Continue, please.
So thank you, because I honestly don't know all of these women as well as I should. I know Sol Ruka is a badass. Lash Legend, she runs with Trick, right? And then Jada Parker is awesome. I love her. And Meechin is awesome. I don't know really Fallon Henley and Kalani Jordan that well, to be perfectly honest. But like I was saying, I'm rooting for Jada Parker, but I have this sneaky suspicion. And it's weird because I feel like she's like the only one that really hasn't been involved with the ongoing storyline with Cody. But I think it's going to happen at some point if they go the kind of more predictable route of what I would expect. If they're gonna have this like whole theory of how Cody could lose at Clash, and there's two ways I think that it could happen. One is kind of they've already done it, and one is a little more avant-garde, I would say. So just we'll work backwards forwards. So the Cody thing, basically, I think the way that they get to the I quit for Cody to make Cody say I quit is you can't threaten Cody. Cody's never going to quit for something you're going to do to him. You got to threaten someone Cody loves. Obviously, the most obvious target then becomes Brandy Rhodes. And to implicate Brandy Rhodes, that's where Meechin comes in, right? Because now you have the female presence of the OC. She's the one getting Brandy and threatening, kind of almost like they did with Rhea Ripley in Judgment Day. She's the one threatening Brandy and making to force Cody to quit. That's one way I see it happen. The way I would book it personally, I know it's never going to happen, but I would have a plant in the crowd, and it would be a fan, and it would be a kid. Because Cody always does, and I would have like the story of like, oh, this kid couldn't afford to come to Clash. He's never been to a wrestling event in his entire life, and Cody bought his tickets. He bought tickets for his whole family front row, because Cody does that shit for real online, and everybody knows it. And then I would have AJ threaten the kid. I would have AJ grab that kid, snatch his ass out of the crowd, and threaten to beat up the kid.
What happens if you use one of AJ's kids as the plant?
Yeah, I mean, even if you use one of AJ's kids as the plant, that would be brilliant, because then he would like but then the kid's gonna have to do a lot of acting to be like afraid of his dad. But just any child actor in the
that's exactly how Dominic. That's exactly how Dominic got into the business.
Yeah, but they made it known with Dominic that like this is Ray's child, and like that they wouldn't be like AJ's threatening his own child and Cody's gonna quit to save AJ's kid. That you lose it has to be like nobody knows it's AJ's kid, right? So I get that, but it's a plan. It's just the idea of like
details can be known later.
Details later. Bottom line, it's a kid. And he's threatening a kid, and that's what makes Cody quit. So this is a whole long-winded way of getting to Mi Shin, though. The original plan A of what I was saying is the idea that Mi Shin would threaten Brandy. They would get Brandy involved in that way. And we have them later on the card. I don't know if, how deeply we're going to discuss, but the OC are going to be facing for the NXT Tag Team titles, and they've been actively involved on SmackDown, backing up AJ as far as like holding off security and fucking with Cody. It's like they're right there with AJ. You know who's been absent though is, like I said, Mi Shin. So I could see them going the route if they really want to strengthen up the OC, bring them all to main roster to really fuck with Cody and show a united front, is you put the North American, the inaugural NXT Women's North American Championship on Mi Shin. You put later the NXT Tag Team Championships on the OC. And then you have them all with gold backing up AJ against Cody. And possibly, like I said, fucking with Brandy to make him quit.
That is a very long-winded one, and
Sorry.
I'd be very curious to see if they were ever to do that.
It's like a lot of fantasy booking, but basically it's a way of saying that I think there's a possibility Mi Shin wins the match.
No, and I just want to kind of give you like an update because this happened on the last episode of NXT. So when you said that Lash Legend worked with Trick Williams, as we saw it on Tuesday, Lash Legends kind of ended things with Trick Williams. And she wants to focus on her thing while Trick is worrying about his deal. So they've decided to, in storyline-wise, go their separate ways. And that's why I think maybe there's something to do with the Ethan Page thing. It'd be very intriguing to me if Lash Legend wins the North American Championship and then helps Ethan Page defeat Trick Williams. That, to me, would be an intriguing storyline. However, I think I'm going to put it on someone who I think is ready to captain the next wave of this division, and I think I'm going to go with Sol Ruca on this one. Like you said, she is a badass. I think now it's her time, and I really like kind of what there is to work with. When you say a Jaden Parker, there is a Lash Legend, Kalani Jordan right there. You got a plethora of people that she can work with moving out after this that are going to vie for that championship. Fallon Henley is another one. But yeah, I think Sol Ruca takes this title, and I think we might see not necessarily a long reign, but a very dominant reign from Sol Ruca before she moves up to the NXT women's title.
I do really like her finisher, the Soul Snatcher.
Yeah. It's a great name, too.
I know.
And I'm not even going to go there, but yeah, we also have, yeah, no, that's a comment that I'm like, you know what? That's a joke that might be a little bit too much, but we do have a tag team championship match. We have the OC, the Good Brothers, and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson going up against the champions Axiom and Nathan Frazier. And I'm actually thinking this match is going to be a lot better than people think. I love the styles clash, pun intended on that one. But I love the fact that there's actual stories here. You have Axiom and Nathan Frazier on the show doing all these meet and greets, all these appearances. And then the OC goes and just beats them up in front. And like they do a lot of intriguing parts. I do think the right move could be putting the titles on the Good Brothers here and having them pretend that they can just beat up all the things and maybe be the bullies of NXT. I kind of like that. But I'm also very intrigued on, what do you do with Axiom and Nathan Frazier post, if that's the case? And that's why this is the match I'm torn, and I want to know what you think of this match.
I definitely think that the Good Brothers are getting those belts. It's not even just about the story that they've been telling with Axiom and Nathan Frazier. It's as much, to kind of pump them up for backing up AJ. I don't know if they necessarily need those belts, but I think it would definitely help. I think if they get the NXT championships, like if they go the route of, if it is actually Michin that wins the North American Women's Championship and they put the belts on the Good Brothers, I almost feel like it's a little bit of foreshadowing of they are going to do a short reign for AJ and let Cody get it back at Mania, at SummerSlam. Sorry. But I think you need to, even disregarding the Misha and stuff, I think you just need to put the belts on the Good Brothers. They just kind of need something. Like, as opposed to just standing behind AJ as enforcers all the time. Like, I think they need a meaningful tag championship run. You obviously aren't going to get it on main roster. So I think this would be a perfect opportunity to have them get tag team titles and have those titles when they're at Clash. I think is, that's the imagery that you want is AJ being backed up by the NXT tag team champions.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of clicked in my head is with all this potential crossover with TNA and NXT, a lot of people have been throwing AJ Styles' name as a potential name that could go over to TNA. Well, knowing that we're seeing champions cross, how fitting would it be if a former Impact Tag Team Champions and Good Brothers were to accompany an AJ Styles over, and maybe we see them go up against some tag teams over on the TNA side who may have some Bullet Club representation as well. Just gonna say, put that out. That Ace and Bay.
It'd be to see how far they really go with it, because if they put the belt on AJ even just for a couple months, you could have AJ show up on TNA with the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
I'm even going to go one step different. What happens if AJ is the one who attacks the winner of the Moose match and he vies for the TNH World title one more time?
Yeah,
if he fails with Cody, what happens if he goes to TNA, the place where it all started for him?
Well, so this is just kind of a pet peeve of mine with Cody of like, you need to give wins to the other guy. Cody can't just win every damn match. Oh, there's the second one. He can't win every match in every feud that he has. Like, one of the ones that drove me the craziest was I get that it was so impressive for him to be even out there, but when he beat Seth Rollins in Hell in a Cell with like a shredded pec that was all purple and blue and like the craziest looking thing ever, to me that was honestly like, that one made no sense. I was like, first of all, you already have two in the bank. You're showing up with one pec, and he's out there dressed like your dad. Psychological, physical warfare. Like, not one little thing is in your favor, and you're just, I'm going over, brother. It is what it is, brother. That's that Hogan booking. That's that. You know what it is? It's like, and I remember the visceral reaction of, because I wasn't there, but it's like I used to go to theater shows back in the day for WWE pay-per-views, because it was cheaper than ordering it at home, but also because you got a little bit of the crowd feel. Because like, even though we're in the theater, like it's a bunch of wrestling fans, we treat it like a wrestling crowd. So we're all cheering and booing and ba. And I remember the visceral reaction when John Cena started the Elimination Chamber at New Year's Revolution and ran the gauntlet through everybody and was still champion when they started lifting the chamber. everybody in the theater was upset. Like there was not one person in that theater that was like root. And John Cena was supposed to be their biggest face of the. Not one single person in that theater was happy that John Cena won. And I'm telling you, when Edge came out and cashed Money in the Bank, and people realized what was happening, everybody freaked. Everybody lost their lids. So it's like Cody has the potential, the dangerous potential of getting into that Lol Cena wins booking, that Hogan booking. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I just want to see him lose. I want to see him lose so bad.
I think the one thing with Cody Rhodes, before we get to the final match of Battleground, I think you will see a shorter reign with Cody Rhodes. I don't think he holds it to next year's WrestleMania, but I do think when he loses it, it will be on a big stage, whether it's a SummerSlam, whether maybe like a Bash at Berlin. But I think it's a meaningful place and meaningful time. I don't know if AJ Styles is the right person right now, because I look at AJ Styles and I'd be like, if he was to win, he is very, very much a short-term champion. And I just think right now, if you're going to do that with anyone, I think there might be a better option out there on the SmackDown side than him. And that name would be Solo Sikoa.
No, I'm so over this bloodline stuff. I can't even begin to tell you. To me, that jumped the shark like a month and a half ago, and I am so over this storyline. This storyline is going nowhere until Roman Reigns comes back, and I absolutely do not want a Solo Sikoa title run whatsoever. Like, let him get the U.S. title or something else. Again, the idea is that I want short title runs. I want Cody to get it back. I don't want Cody to just lose it and I'll have it. That's why I think AJ's perfect. AJ can literally get it at Clash and lose it at SummerSlam, back to Cody, have it for those couple months. It sets up perfectly, and you just put it back on Cody after, and then you do whatever you want after that. Solo Sikoa to me is just like, man, they're not quite that bad, but they have a little bit of go away heat with me. This is why I really struggle with AEW programming right now, because on their program, they've got two characters that just 100%, like, I turn off my TV when I watch, and I'm sorry, the Learning Tree Jericho stuff, it ain't for me. And Don Callis is on that show way too much. I cannot stand that man. Between Don Callis and Chris Jericho, like that, when both of them are like featured throughout the episode, I'm like, this is unwatchable. Like, this is garbage.
Before we get to that Battlegrounds match, Chris Best does come in with a comment saying, I do think Axiom and Nathan Frazier go their separate ways. You could move either one of them into a North American title scene or a heavyweight title scene. I think Nathan Frazier as North American champion makes sense at some point. I don't think he's the guy to beat Obafemi, but I do like it at some point. The last match
would be against like Wesley. Like, if they put the belt on Wesley at some point, like, but I kind of got away with from it. But I was going to say the same thing, essentially, that I do see that if they lose, I can see Axiom and Nathan Frazier going their separate ways without having to do like the big, like, oh, we're breaking up as a tag team, but just like, hey, we had a great run. I'm ready for a singles run. You're ready for a singles run. Let's shake hands and, wish each other the best. Like, I think you could have it would be nice to see a mutual healthy tag team breakup in WWE and just have them go their separate ways.
More like that's kind of like how the APA, when they got split with the brand split, that's almost exactly how they went. They just ended up going and doing their own different thing outside of it. But yeah, when they went their own ways, they had the one last beer and then they walked out the door, which was very symbolic too. But no, I agree. A very amicable split can go a long ways, because, again, if something was to happen down the road where they need somebody, there you go. It's instant option that you can go with, and I think that's a great way of just bringing you back. But the last match is a match between the Shayna Baszler, who is just, I think, doing some of her best work. When you really look at it, top to bottom, whether it's the team with Zoe Stark or even the stuff with Lola Vice, who she is going up against in an underground match, I think quietly Shayna Baszler is doing some of her best work, especially since her last run in NXT. But I like this match for the sole point that we're going to see something really strike with Lola Vice here, and maybe we see Zoe Stark come back down as well to help Shayna Baszler, because if I'm WWE, I'm really looking at the real potential of taking those tag titles off Jade and Bianca at Clash of Castle in that triple threat. I think Shayna and Zoe could very well be that right team to do so.
Yeah, there's no way they're losing those titles.
No, but
I would put my entire life savings, my house, my children, I will put any amount. There's no bet I would not make that Jade and Bianca are not coming out of Clash with those titles. Like, they are, there's less than 0% chance that they're losing those titles at Clash. However, I do love Shayna Baszler. She's been one of my favorites for a long time. I love NXT Ruthless Shayna Baszler. In fact, it's been one of my biggest lamentations of like how she gets treated on main roster. It's like, I don't understand how she isn't just also a crazy, badass on main roster the same way she was basically all through her NXT run. Like, she said, like, I beat Ronda Rousey. Like, again, so underrated. I feel like her main roster run has been so underrated. I feel like she is deserving of some title runs, and I would almost say it's criminal the fact that she hasn't had the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship at any point during her main roster runs. Like, she hasn't even really been in contention a lot of the time, which is crazy. It's like she's just so believable as an athlete, these styles of matches generally not my favorite when you're trying to do the MMA thing in WWE. But if there's two people that you're going to get to do it that's going to look awesome, Shayna Baszler being one of them is like money. And then I really like Lola Vice. I think she looks fantastic. She's obviously a Stone Cold Fox, but she's also like actually like really good and technical at what she does. So I think this presents as, this is one of those gimmick matches that I think is actually going to really work in both of their favor. I think it's going to be really interesting. I do think Shayna ultimately wins, whether it's because of involvement from Zoe Stark or just, some kind of other cheating or chicanery. Like, I do see her going over, but yeah, I'm intrigued by the idea of this match.
Yeah, and Lola Vice is no slouch, as she was a former MMA fighter herself. She has competed in Bellator, so she does have that background, that kind of that NXT underground thing is. Now, the one thing I want to point out is this is happening in a UFC building, this show. So the potential of a UFC crossover in this match, I think, is viable. I think it's very highly possible. I'm taking Loka in this match, or Lila, sorry. Simply because I do believe that we're going to see somebody from the UFC help her. And I'm very curious. I do not pay attention to the UFC nowadays. All the guys that I like are now too old to fight. So I don't know who's hot. Like, I know Conor McGregor pulled out of a show because he got hurt in training. That's like the most I know about the UFC. Huh?
When you say UFC to me, I still think of Chuck Liddell.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's what I mean. I'm just saying, all I know in the modern day version is that Conor McGregor is still there, but he got hurt in his training camp. I'm like a
handful of guys nowadays that I'm aware of, but like for the most part, it's not like back in like when it was like the light heavyweight division back then when it was like Chuck Liddell, Rampage, Tito Ortiz, Shamrock, you had Lyoto Machida, like you had a bunch of dudes. Rashad Evans was a gangster. Like they were loaded back then. Now the only guy I can name is like, I know there's that Sean Strickland guy. He's kind of I don't like him. He's kind of a D-bag. There's what's his face? Izzy, the guy who did the Undertaker entrance, which was really cool. Israel, a banger, whatever it is. I can't even remember. Adesanya. There it is. Adesanya. John Bones Jones. I think he's still around. I don't know.
Couldn't tell you. If he's not there, he's in jail. That's all I know.
Yeah. I bet Brock Lesnar was there. Brock Lesnar being in UFC was one of the funniest things to me because he was terrible, but he was amazing. He was like, he basically just like would go in and like he was an incredible wrestler. That was obvious. Like even having not done it like for reals in like years and years, he was just an incredible amateur wrestler. But he would just like get a dude down and then just do these like lunch pail punches that were just like they looked so ineffective, but at the same time, like they hurt because like his hands are just so big.
You had that one scene where he is just punching Frank Mir in their second fight, and the bouncing of his head into the cage.
Just again with his little hammer fist, they look like so, and they look weak. Like when you just look at him doing it, like, but then like you're just watching his face get mashed, turn to hamburger meat.
Yeah. Might have to watch some old Brock Lesnar fights. But yeah, no, I mean that's kind of our battleground prediction in a nutshell there. Yeah, in case if you like the long game. We didn't speed through that one like Andrade did when he defeated Ricochet for that title on Friday. But before we even get anything, we still want to talk some football. How do we not talk football between the two of us, right? But a segue to go into football, I think, needs to be here. Chris Best is coming in and saying, I wish John Jones wasn't around. He's too much of a liability because of his legal issues. Very true. Very true. But before we go there, I just want to say that this transition to fantasy football is brought to you by our sponsors, Rogue Energy, where you can use the promo code PERISH, PERISH, for 10% off your order. Just a little quick video to entice you to help me get some money from them. And that is rogueenergy.com, PERISH, Perish, for 10% off your order as we transition into some fantasy football with a nice little fun draft that I have here. We did one on your show that I believe is coming out very quickly, if I'm not mistaken.
3 weeks. Yeah, it's still kind of far away. There's this Wednesday is Bob Lung. And then the next Wednesday, actually, wait, no, I'm wrong. You're week and a half. There we go. Week and a half. Because I actually got you mixed up with somebody else. So there you go. Bob Lung, and then yours, and then my guy Big Draft Energy comes after that. So yeah, yours is going to be on, let's just pull it up here because I'm bad with dates. The 19th. So in a week and a half, June 19th is going to drop at 8 a.m. in the morning.
The perfect 10 days.
There you go.
And you can check that out here on the list below on Jack Lucenay's channels there. there over the Worst Sports channel. But yeah, the draft we have here is putting together your football team from an offensive standpoint. So a quarterback, 2 receivers, a running back, and a tight end, and then obviously a head coach. But the kick is you got to use current day WWE superstars. So starting with the pick 1, I'm going to give that to you as you graciously gave me the first pick on your show. No order. You don't have. You can choose wherever you want, but who would you take?
So traditionally in fantasy football, you're going to want to go wide receiver with your first round pick. I'm going to need a wide receiver before he leaves the WWE. I'm going to take Ricochet with my first overall pick, and he's going to be my number 1 wide receiver. With that kind of leaping ability, athleticism, he can literally flip over a guy, catch the ball, and land on his feet and keep running. So I'm taking Ricochet with my number 1 pick.
Okay. See, now you can go that route, right? Like you want that athletic. But then I look and I see, well, isn't there like maybe a Megatron type guy out there that I can grab? Somebody who's just big, who can grab everything at top because nobody can grab that. I think there is. And that is why on my wide receiver, I'm going to somebody you can tackle. I'm going Braun Strowman.
Ah, son of a... Yeah, that was some serious snipage. You know what? In fantasy football, it's all about sniping people. That was definitely going to be my pick, not as a wide receiver. I was going to take him as a running back. So I was going to be like, yeah, good luck trying to tackle my running back. He's going to be my Derrick Henry. But no, you sniped him me and made him a wide receiver.
If there's one thing I can do, I can parachute pretty good.
He's got no hands. You're going to get these hands. They're going to drop everything. That's what's going to happen.
It's all right. It's almost like Drew Brees, like 3-yard passes, and then he just runs.
I got to pivot. I need a quarterback. I need a wide. So you said it was quarterback, 2 wide receiver, running back, tight end. We're going 5.
And then a coach, but we'll do coach last.
Okay, coach. All right, let me think here. Ooh. Okay, no. I mean, you took Braun Strowman, so I'm going to need another thick boy for running back. Or, maybe I need to go with the speed route now. You really are messing me up here.
Yes. That's what I do, man.
I got it. We're going to go traditional. We're going to go with a veteran. You talk about a guy like Mike Evans, who is tall, rangy, athletic, has done it for years and years, technical. His death, taxes, and 1,000 yards by Mike Evans. Who would be the equivalent in the WWE? I'm going to go with Randy Orton as my wide receiver too. He's very technical, athletic. He can do all the things, and he's big. He's deceptively tall.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this man just earlier today. You want that big guy that you can't move. Well, for my running back, I'm going to go Oba Femi.
Nice. I like that. I can't decide what I want to do with my running back. If I want to go now, it's like, do I want to go with the Jamal Charles, Chris Johnson route, or am I going with the Derrick Henry, Earl Campbell route? Ooh, okay. We're gonna go with our quarterback. I need an all-around guy for quarterback. The way my system runs, I need a guy who can run just as well as he can throw, who can throw just as well as he can run. I need a man with integrity, with respect, with obedience. I need a man with class. I need a man who is a ring general. I'm going to take Gunther for my quarterback.
Not going to lie, that was my next wide receiver.
I'm going to take Gunther, but I'm going to take him as quarterback because I think he's just such a good all-around athlete. And also, again, you talk about the strategy. The quarterback has to be like the smartest guy on your team. He's very technical and savvy in that way too. So I think as a quarterback, Gunther, great. That's a good pick. I think, and I like that I got him third. So I'm getting value also at ADP.
Which we can get to for a lot of people who might not sure what ADP is, but they could be new to the fantasy game.
Average draft position for those not in the know.
Oh, well, there you go. See, now I'm at the thing where I don't know if I want to go QB, wide receiver, or tight end, but what I do know is that I think I'm going to go with my tight end, and I'm going to go with the world heavyweight champion, Damian Priest.
I like that. I like that.
I think that's a good ADP as well, if I'm not.
Okay. So it seems like I'm going to be very traditional. This is going to be a build where I'm fading running back, which is, zero running back is the way of the world these days in a lot of leagues. So I'm going to leave my running back for last. I'm going to draft my tight end because we already have Gunther at quarterback, Randy Orton at wide receiver, and Ricochet at wide receiver. So we've got 2 wide receivers, different abilities. I got a speed guy. I got an all-around guy. I got my quarterback. I need a tight end. I'm going to cheat a little. I'm going to cheat a little bit, all right? He's still technically, I'm pretty sure, on the active roster, even though we haven't seen the man in a minute.
You're going almost, aren't you?
I'm going Omos. I'm going Omos as my tight end. Good luck defending. He's just going to put his arm straight in the air in the end zone, and he's just going to catch 20 touchdowns a year because nobody can reach that high. Not even Braun Strowman can get up to block the passes that we're throwing to Omos. We're shooting him over the mountain, and Omos is coming up to catch him.
All right. Well, for my next wide receiver, I'm just going to go with the big brutes, guys. And what I love is I have nothing but muscle. So I'm going to go with the almighty Bobby Lashley.
Nice. I like that. Oh. Uh-oh. You left. We both kind of messed up, and I can't believe that I'm going to
I have this planned out. I know exactly what I'm doing.
Oh, well, I don't know about that because, I faded running back. And traditionally, like I said, in fantasy, that's like the way of the world nowadays, 0 running back. And it's because what happens is you look up in those middle rounds at running back and there is value. There's guys that are proven and, even though they might be a little bit longer in the tooth and, have to take some time off here and there. I mean, at my running back spot, I'm going to take the king of the spear. I'm going to take, I'm going to pivot even again. Oh, shit. Sorry. There's the number 2. We got to 2. Triple pivot. I was about to say the tribal chief, but no, I'm going to go younger. Running back, you got to go young. Braun Breaker. Bro, Braun Breaker at my running back in the 5th round. Oh.
Well, I'm glad you did that because for my quarterback, I'm going to go to the tribal chief, Roman Reigns.
I was about to snipe you, and then I'm like, oh, man. I was going to take Roman as my running back, 100%. And as soon as I said King of the Spear, I was like, wait, there's a better spear now.
Yeah, I was hoping because I was either going to go Roman or Seth for my quarterback. But here's my hot take. As Seth was known to be the leader of the Shield, I think Roman as the tribal chief is a greater leader.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And that's why. Now, so just so everybody knows, we have our final lineup. All we need is a coach. But right now at quarterback, you have Gunther with your wide receivers, Randy Orton and Ricochet. Your running back is Braun Breaker, and your tight end is Omos.
Yes.
Whereas I have Roman Reigns as my quarterback. My wide receivers are Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley. My tight end is Damian Priest, and my running back is Obafemi. I also was really thinking about Chad Gable as my quarterback there too, but when I have the pedigree of a Roman Reigns, how can you say no to that?
The only problem with your team is that if you look on Madden, like their strength ratings are all going to be at 95, but the speed rating is going to be like 80 for most of your guys.
Yeah, but at the same time, I question a lot of people how they're going to be able to tackle some of these guys because they don't bump for people. They don't bump. They don't go down. They'll just hold everyone. They'll be like
At the same time, like I said, not I don't think there's one guy there that can match speed with Ricochet. So you're gonna get burnt over the top on some of those wide receiver routes because you're gonna be trying to cover Omos and Randy Orton in the middle.
Dude,
Ricochet,
you just take a penalty and you just like hit him, and then he's out for a bit.
100% press man coverage is the only way.
We're gonna get those flags, man, but we're gonna make them count.
I'm gonna finish because for Coach, I'm gonna take. I mean, no one's listening to him right now. We will listen to him. It's the obvious pick. I'm gonna take the wise man. You might get the tribal chief, but you're not getting the wise man. He's gonna be my coach, Paul Heyman, to be clear.
And then I'm just going to round it off with a guy who's smart enough to put all the real pieces in play. He is the leader of the WWE. He's Nick Khan.
I thought you were going to say Triple H.
Oh, I was swerving you on that one. But, I mean, Nick Khan is the reason why all these guys came to WWE. CM Punk has flat out admitted that he is in WWE because of Nick Khan. He does the unthinkable, and that is what I need a coach to do with this lineup that I have right now.
Yeah. I like it. It's a great swerve. It's a good pick.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. One more, like obviously now we're going into the fantasy stuff. I'm currently doing a fantasy draft that is taking way too long, but you know what? I'm gonna just put this out there too. This is kind of what's going on so far. I did have the 6th pick. Rome Oduzzo went right before me, so I made sure. I know I strengthened up that tight end position. I did get Brock Bowers.
Nice.
So I'm okay. As of right now, where we stand, we're on the last pick of the first round. There are 10 teams. Marvin Harrison Jr. went number 1. Caleb Williams went number 2. Malik Neighbors went 3. Jalen Daniels went 4. Odunze went 5th. Brock Bowers went 6th. Jonathan Brooks went 7th, and I was very confused by that. But at the same time, at this point, we've only had 3 teams pick. So, then JJ McCarthy went 8th, and then Drake May went 9th. The Drake May represented the 4th guy. We basically had one guy pick 1, 3, 5, and 7. Another guy picked 2, 4, and 6. Or sorry, 2, 4, and 8. I had 6, and then another guy had 9. So, it's been pretty slow since we started yesterday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
The 2 quick comments I have is when you're in 2 quarterback leagues like that, definitely you're going to get an advantage if you're not the person having to grab a quarterback in the draft, because it's crazy to me taking Drake May or JJ McCarthy ahead of some of these wide receiver prospects.
This guy really needed quarterback help.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Jonathan Brooks hype is just out of control. I'm so out on that. I'm not touching him in best ball. I'm not touching him in redraft. I don't think he's going to play a full season. I think you're going to see a lot more Miles Sanders than you're expecting this year. It's like even this is where sometimes I don't understand the thinking of fantasy players, because it's like even in a perfect world where Jonathan Brooks is 100% healthy, he's still playing for the Carolina Panthers. Like, why would he be so much better than the combination of Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard last year? It's not like the offensive line got geometrically better or anything. Like, the offensive line maybe improves marginally. You hope Bryce Young takes a step, and even if, again, it's like if ifs and buts all come true, maybe he cracks like 1,000. Like, he's not going to surpass and wildly outproduce his ADP. It just doesn't make any sense. He's going in rounds I would much rather have James Conner, and even in a rookie draft, Trey Benson all day over Jonathan Brooks. It's not even close for me.
Yeah. So I do have the second pick in the second round. Trey Benson is my go-to guy. If not, I will pick probably Blake Corum because I do need some help in the running back. Not a lot. I'm pretty good on wide receiver, so I'm not really too worried. But if a guy like Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas is there, I might consider it.
I would be hard pressed to pass on McConkey.
I honestly do believe he's going on this next pick. That is why I don't think that.
Yeah, okay. If that's
I also do
the
have
only reason, because if for some reason that guy were to take anybody else, I would take McConkey. I don't care. I was gonna say I don't care who your wide receiver room is. I would take McConkey because I just believe that strongly in his ability and in Justin Herbert's ability. And the combination of the two, I think McConkey more so than Quentin Johnston or anyone else on that team is going to be the guy that ascends to being the number one wide receiver, because nowadays in the NFL, the number one wide receiver, and it's kind of funny because Pittsburgh for the longest time actually used to do this, where our slot guy was actually a lot of the times our number one wide receiver. And the way that we ran our schemes was like, and you literally can find this on Madden going back years and years. It's that imprinted into the playbook. Like, these are regular Madden plays of the way that Pittsburgh lines up their wide receivers a lot of the time when they're in a 3 wide receiver set out of single back formation is rather than having, so you have obviously your 5 linemen, your tight end, your quarterback, your running back, and then you have your slot wide receiver, and then you have your Y and your X on the outside. And normally that slot wide receiver for a lot of teams and a lot of schemes, that's the wide receiver 3. But in the Pittsburgh scheme, it's actually the wide receiver 1 that's in that spot. And that wide receiver 1 in certain schemes, when it's 3 wide receiver, will be in the slot, and then in other schemes it'll be on the outside. And so it's just inherently by the scheme moving that player around the offense into different schemes and zones and ways to get them open. And it almost always translates into them being the primary number 1 target on their team. So you look at a guy like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's how he plays. You look at a guy like CeeDee Lamb, that's how he's most effective. Even guys like Justin Jefferson play at their maximum capabilities when they're moving in and out of the slot. So it's like when you identify that guy, the guy who could potentially be that on the team, it's like, and you're talking about the exodus of not only Keenan Allen, but Austin Eckler. So you're talking about an easy 200 passing targets. Where do you think those passing targets are going to go? They ain't all going to Quentin Johnston and Joshua Palmer and some of these scrubs on the outside. A lot of it's going to go to cold-ass McConkey. And I'm telling you, Lad McConkey is going to be – he's going to be a thing. He's going to be – in his first year, it's going to be more of a PPR thing. But I'm telling you, he's the guy that I think – you just look at how he runs routes and how smooth he is. Even simple things of watching him in drills, the way that he can – I know it seems so silly, but the way he was able to run a straight line and catch passes on both sides of his body, it looked so different than every other wide receiver that went after him in that drill. It's like he looked different. You can just tell he's different. He's got it. And again, I think the way that they're going to use him in that system, he's going to get an easy 125 targets, 100 his first year. Have him pegged for, I would say, about 80 receptions, 1,000 yards, and maybe like 6 to 8 touchdowns his first year would be like optimal. And, you know, the only problem I have with him in best ball and redraft is he's being drafted a little bit too high, because where I have to draft him, he has to hit that ceiling to equal out the ADP. And I generally don't like taking guys where I'm like, if every single thing goes right, this guy's going to equal exactly where I'm taking him right now. Like, I look for the guys that are going to surpass their ADP, not just meet it. And that's where a lot of times, even though I might like a guy like a Ladd McConkey or, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. There's no way I'm drafting him in redraft or in best ball in the first round because he has to hit generational rookie numbers or that pick isn't going to feel good. If he only gets 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, which would be an incredible rookie season, it's going to feel not great from your first round pick. Whereas like in dynasty rookie drafts, it's obviously very different because you're drafting the guy for his career. But just saying, like, I do view Ladd McConkey as being like a guy, and rarely in dynasty do I see guys in 5 to 7 year windows. That's what I see for him because you're getting him as a rookie. Easily he's going to play out 3 years and then probably re-sign, I would assume. And so it's like you're getting probably 6 to 7 years out of him with Justin Herbert, who's also young. Like, I would buy in on that potential, assuming he's there. And if it's him that goes, then you take Trey Benson because I see him as taking over that running back role. I mean, James Conner almost never lasts a full season, so he'll get games this year, but I could see him taking over fully as like the starter by next year.
Yeah. No, and I agree with Marvin Harrison. It's something where when I'm taking a rookie in just a regular draft at all, I'm very hesitant about where I'm taking him simply because, one, you have no idea, A, how he fits into the regular formation. 2, is he producing? There's just a lot of questions. Now, you might be very excited for the player, but I still have too many questions than I do answers with him. Whereas, hey, in years prior, if they're making 0 scheme changes and they're making very little personnel changes, why wouldn't I think that a player wouldn't at least have a very much mirrored season on the average from the last one, right? So, like, hypothetically, if I'm just going to use my team because I'm very more. If I'm looking at my team, they drafted a Bub Means, and I might really like Bub Means as a wide receiver. I'm not going to pick him any higher than I would an A.T. Perry, simply because I know A.T. Perry fits a lot better in the scheme and probably will be used a lot more. I can like Bub Means, but I'm going to be very much, if I can't get him near the end of my picks that or a waiver wire, I'm not going to run the risk of drafting him too high because there's too much risks on that end to me with the rookie.
Well, the real key is it's not about the rookie, it's about the ADP. And that's how it is with every player. There is not a player in fantasy football that I am completely out on until you talk about the average draft position. And so when you look at, last year, for example, I was very bullish on Sam Laporta. The thing was you didn't have to pay up for Sam Laporta. Even though he was being pretty highly drafted for a rookie tight end, it was still like 10th round, usually like 9th, 10th round. Like it was still at a relative discount to where I could see that his potential will wildly surpass where he's being drafted. And that's the thing. So now you look at Sam Laporta this year, I'm not touching that. I'm so out on that because he's being drafted as the number 1 tight end off the board. So that's the kind of thing where it's like if you made that bet last year in Dynasty that you bet on Sam Laporta and you drafted him, let's say, ahead of Dalton Kincaid, then you won that bet because he is at maximum value now. And you could even, honestly, if you traded him right now, you get a crazy haul probably. But, like, you don't need to trade him. You can hold him for another year or two and still trade him probably at maximum value. So, again, you've won the game of the average draft position because he hit. You can't, if you draft a guy in the first round, like if Marvin Harrison, again, you're drafting at the 101, it's like he has to hit or it's a bust. There's no option now. Even Puka Nacua last year, people are like always going to say, oh, who's the next Puka Nacua? Who's the next Puka Nacua? The next Puka Nacua doesn't exist because Puka Nacua was going undrafted last year, unless you were watching my show, because I was telling people to take him in the last round because I saw the path, not to an insane breakout season at the level that he had, but I definitely saw the path to him being the wide receiver too in a Matt Stafford offense, being able to wildly surpass his ADP if he's drafted in the last round. Trey McBride was another one. I was very enamored with Trey McBride last season because he was going in like the 14th round. I love guys like that. I love Jake Ferguson this year because Jake Ferguson is coming off like 70-ish receptions, 750-ish yards, and 5 touchdowns, and nothing has changed on the Dallas Cowboys. So he's going into his 3rd season now, coming off a breakout season, but he's being drafted in like the 10th round next to Evan Ingram. Whereas if I want Trey McBride or Sam Laporta, I got to take them in like the 3rd or 4th round. So it's all relative because I still love them as players. I think they're very talented, but I'm not paying 3rd or 4th round usually for Sam Laporta or Trey McBride. I've done it a couple times here and there with McBride, only because I know I can get the Kyler Murray stack that comes back to me later. But I have 0 Sam Laporta this year.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that in a draft that I had last year, I ended up picking Sam Laporta with my last pick, and it is a 3-man keeper. And pretty much, if I want to keep him, he was my 15th pick. He now is just a 14th round pick for me to keep him forever. And I'm like, that is nothing but great value across the board. And I will definitely do that, especially when you're looking at positions of strength at times. And sometimes you either get a good tight end or you have to settle for one that you were wishing that you didn't get. It's harder on positions where you have one of one, whereas when there's at least one of two, like running back or wide receiver, you're more okay with a chance here and there.
I mean, even Brock Bowers is being undervalued this year, which is kind of funny because it's a combination of two things, right? People, regular fantasy players for the most part eventually smarten up. And so the Brock Bowers thing is it's funny because it's a combination of most people are aware now that rookie tight ends don't have true breakouts. The other thing is we had the Kyle Pitts experience of we thought he was the next generational tight end, and he even had 1,000 yards and it didn't matter because he only had 1 touchdown, and it was pretty rough for fantasy. It was not very consistent. And then I think the other thing is that people forget like the maximum, like the top tight ends, like a crazy tight end. Like, people are talking about like Trey McBride had a breakout season last year. He had like 800 yards, like 5 to 7 touchdowns or something like that. It wasn't like he had like a Jimmy. I think people sometimes overreact like he had like a Jimmy Graham season. Like even Sam Laporta got there on touchdowns. Like if he has any kind of touchdown regression and finishes around like the same year, he's not going to be number 1 with a bullet. Like the only guy that I've really ever seen do that is Travis Kelce and Jimmy Graham. There was the crazy Jimmy Graham year where he had,
you wouldn't put Gronk in that category either.
I mean, no, because again, Gronk it came more in bursts. Like Gronk's seasons, I feel like get overrated if you look at like, and when I'm talking about, I'm talking about all-time tight end seasons. So this is not saying that like Gronk wasn't an amazing tight end.
No, and we're also talking fantasy.
Gronk never put up 1,200 and fucking 12. Sorry, there's my third one. I went over. Darn it! It's because we went longer this podcast. We went longer time wise. So
if it's okay, I've been pretty good, so I'll just give you one of mine.
Yeah, there we go. But no, what I was trying to say is like Gronk never touched wide receiver numbers at the tight end spot, and I think that's where people kind of have this weird allure that like tight ends can routinely do that. Where it's like the only person who's even come close is Travis Kelce. And if you actually look at his numbers, a lot of times he's like barely cracking the 1,000-yard barrier. It's like tight ends aren't going out and dropping 1,500-yard seasons. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think just the idea of the tight end position gets overvalued in a sense because there's so few of them that do anything at all. And then it's like the ones that are doing stuff, It's really not as big as you think. So it's like taking 8 points from your tight end spot is an absolute win. Whereas like if a wide receiver did that, you'd be upset.
Yeah. And that's, to me, like, I think too, you also have to just you have to take a good look on like what kind of a league you're playing. Are you playing a league where, it's a PPR? Is it half point, full point? Do you get a lot of those cheap points just if your guy gets targeted a lot? Okay, now I'm looking at, does this tight end, does he get a lot of receptions? And that's something that you have to look at sometimes more so than just if, he's likely to be a touchdown thing. Now, touchdowns are great to get like a good score on points, but man, you're going to make up those points on PPR if you just know like that's a guy like Travis Kelce. He's not just a tight end, but he's one of the top targets for Patrick Mahomes. So you can make up those points on just catches, even if he doesn't score. So you got to look at that as well. And I always do, because man, as much as you hate those little cheap points at the end, when they work against you, you love them when they work for you.
Just to go back on the Gronk thing too, like Gronk's 2 best seasons in 2014, 2015, he had 1,124 yards and 1,176 yards. So he's never surpassed 1,200 yards in his career, and he had 12 and 11 touchdowns both of those years. It was like, it's the touchdowns. It's the touchdowns that really get you there when you're a tight end. So it's like, even, Jimmy Graham and his monster season, I'm pretty sure it was like he just went over. That's what it was. Like Jimmy Graham had 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns, and then he had another season where he had 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns. So it's like that was monster. Like you were getting close to wide receiver numbers with Jimmy Graham those couple seasons. That's where it was like. And again, those are like when we're talking about Gronk and Jimmy, those are like 4 of the greatest fantasy tight end seasons that have ever existed in the NFL. And then like all the other ones are Travis Kelce.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of look at maybe Sam Laporta, because like when you get a season like what Sam Laporta had from a fantasy standpoint, people tend to get overexcited.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're assuming that Laporta is going to make any kind of a leap, like coming.
So I think that's one thing people really have to look into, the fact that just be smart. You can't necessarily go all out on that, on whether or not one guy has a great season. I think too, you have to make sure that there's patterns, and it's great that you like a player, but you almost have to put that aside when you're choosing a guy, especially when you're saying the ADP. You're always hoping that you're picking a guy who's going to be better than that ADP and not just equal value or less, right?
Yeah, and with Laporta, it's the other part of it with Laporta is you're attaching it to Jared Goff, not Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah. So with Travis Kelce, it's like the reason Travis Kelce was able to get to like 1,300 yards is because Patrick Mahomes can throw for 4,000 to 5,000 yards every year. Jared Goff is capable of a 4,000 to 5,000 yard season. I don't know if he's going to crack 5K ever with the Detroit Lions. So it's just, and again, it's like he had such a good season last year. If he takes any kind of regression at all, you are absolutely screwed at where you're drafting him. If he gets 70 receptions, 700 yards, and 7 touchdowns this year instead of the 80, 810 he had last year, it's gonna be a disservice to your team. And it's just like, again, I don't see those as huge values that he's gonna finish so far ahead of Evan Ingram and Jake Ferguson and guys that can get literally like 6 rounds later.
Yeah, and another thing that really would help like Jared Goff is Amon St. Brown has to have a better year than he did for Jared Goff to hit those numbers, but also a Jamison Williams has to break out this year for that to be as well. Like, and it might not come at the value of Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta might not be getting more points because Jared Goff has a good season. It could be surrounding players. So I think that's something you got to factor in, that will Sam Laporta be the prime target, or is, you're going to see more balls going to Jamison Williams. And if that's the case, that doesn't help Sam Laporta at all. So I think that's something people have to realize. If you have a lot of weapons, you might not have all these mega stars. You might just have a lot of good valued picks. And that might be it.
But it's also just the fact of, like I said, it's like, even if he repeats, okay, then you paid the appropriate price. Like, you didn't get a value on him. That's the point. If Sam Laporta goes and does exactly what he did last year, okay, cool. You paid the appropriate price for Sam Laporta then. But you didn't get like a huge steal on him. The whole point is last year you got value on Laporta and McBride because they were such late picks.
Yeah. And so that's why it's like caution. You always have to be cautioned. And sometimes too, and I want to kind of ask you, because this is something, it's more because I know that we have people in this chat that don't necessarily play fantasy football. When you're seeing everyone going down, say maybe you're picked 8 out of 10 or 12 or whatever the case may be, and you know that there's wide receivers, dropping off. Understand that pattern, but at the same time, if you have an opening to grab a great guy too, what are your thoughts on maybe saying, hey, if I'm picking late and it's a snake draft, I'm going to pick high in the second round. If you have an option to grab a guy in a different position of great value, I'm not opposed to that. What are your thoughts about it?
It really depends for me. It becomes contextual the further you get into the draft. And then what I mean by that is the further you get into the draft, and this depends where you are in the draft. So let's just use a 12 team as an example. If you're at 8 to 11, that means somebody is picking in between you, maybe multiple somebodies. So you can look at their teams real quick and be like, okay, well, this guy already has, if it's single quarterback, like he already has a quarterback. That guy already has a tight end. So I'm not going to take a onesie position if the guys in between me already have them. Because, like, yes, they might reach and take them, but it's like I can't account for stupidity. You know what I mean? Like, I can't account for people doing the wrong thing. I have to account for people doing the right thing. So if I'm looking at your team and you already have a quarterback and a tight end, I'm not going to assume that you're going to target another quarterback and tight end when we're in like the 5th round. I'm going to assume that you're looking at wide receiver and running back. And so if I see 4 wide receivers I like, let's say I see 4 tight ends that I like were still on the board. But there's only 2 wide receiver in this spot that I like. Well, I'm going to take the wide receiver because the tight end's going to come back to me. And it could be the same reverse. If I look and I see, well, I'm at the 10 spot, the guy at 11 and 12, neither of them have a tight end. If I don't take my tight end here, very good chance he goes to one of those guys in one of those 4 picks. So I'm going to actually take my tight end even a little bit above ADP, which, again, is average draft position. So, like, if my guys, if I'm in the 9th round, the guy's projected to go in the 10th round, like late 10th, I don't care. I know he's not coming back to me, so I have to take him here or I'm not going to get him. So I'll take, a perfect example is Jake Ferguson or Evan Ingram. And let's say I'm at the back of the 8th. I know that they're not coming back at the back of the 9th. So I have to take at the back of the 10th, or whatever. Like, I know they're not going through a whole other snake. So, and if I see, like I said, that's where the position where it's like, now I got to look at the teams behind me. Do they have tight ends? Okay. No, they don't. One of them might take a tight end here. So that's where it's like, I'll jump to ADP buy a full round and a half if I have to make sure I get Jake Ferguson. So it's like, yeah, I might have overpaid, but it's like, again, back of the 8th round. I know the 2 guys behind me need tight ends, and I know he's not going through the whole 9th round to get to me at my 10th pick. So let me just take him right here, and I'll take a wide receiver next. You know, you flip it around that way.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, the one thing I want to do is I want to get your take on who you think are going to be the top point guys in each position in fantasy football going into this year. And I want to kind of test this out and seeing, hey, who can call this before the season starts? So I'm going to go with, and this is just from a fantasy football perspective, not a actual real life. Like, I'm not saying who do you think is going to pass for the most yards, but who do you think is going to get the most points out of a quarterback this year in the NFL from a fantasy standpoint?
So I will give you the 2 guys I think and a dark horse. The 2 guys I think, really, it's standard answer. It's going to be Jalen Hurts. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes only he added weapons. They added Xavier Worthy, and if he's a thing, that's going to basically unlock the rest of that offense back to a little bit more of what we saw when it was back in those Tyreek Hill days. They potentially could be scary. It's just also, to me, it's like he's the most talented player in the league, so I'm just going to bet on him every time. And then with Jalen Hurts, it's, you know, the rushing quarterback hack, plus the fact that they added Saquon Barkley, who could help him maybe get some extra cheap passing touchdowns. A.J. Brown is still there. Devonta Smith is still there. Dallas Goedert is still there. Even though you lose Jason Kelce on the offensive line, I don't think that crushes their offensive line. They still have a good offensive line. I think the whole team kind of, you know, went into the crapper at the end of the year last year. I think they're going to rebound this year. So if I'm in a super flex and I'm at 101, I'm taking either Hurts or Mahomes. But the dark horse guy, and you're going to be able to get him a lot later, that I think has a chance to actually finish not just top 5, but actually number 1 in fantasy scoring, Tua Tagovailoa out in Miami. All they've done, besides the fact that you already have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, is go ahead and add Malik Washington, Jalen Wright, and even a tight end in Jonnu Smith. So it's like you've only added pieces to make this an even more complete offense under the stewardship of Mike McDaniel. If Tua stays healthy, he could legit like put up some crazy numbers this year, and I think he could push for number 1.
So on a betting, if you're a betting man and you had to pick one, because
I'm
okay.
When you say betting is a different thing. Betting is because
it's more of a bet between you and I on who we think is going to be the most top guy. It's not like I'm not putting money on the line because I'm cheap and I have a kid. I can't do
no. If we're just doing it between us and who I think, because when you say betting, as soon as you say betting, my mind goes to the line of like, well, obviously I'm not going to bet on Mahomes. I'm not going to win much if it is him. Yeah. I'm going to bet on Tua because the line is going to be longer and I'll win more money. But no, if we're just doing it like between you and me, I'm actually going to go Hurts. I'm going to say Hurts. I'm going to say with the rushing touchdowns and a little bit more in the passing game, I'm going to go with Hurts, number 1.
All right. I think I'm going to go with Josh Allen.
See, I didn't say him because I actually think he's going to regress. I think he's going to regress 2 ways. Not just obviously that he lost Stephon Diggs and that, you know, now you're replacing Diggs with a rookie. You're replacing Gabe Davis with Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. And, you know, Gabe Davis did a lot more for that offense than people realize. He was very much had nothing to do with catching the ball, but he was fantastic in terms of like their run blocking schemes and like the zone runs they like to do. So that's going to be a hard thing to replace. But then I also look at 15 rushing touchdowns. That's a big number. I think that number comes down. If you're telling me that he regresses and has 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns, but also the same kind of craptacular passing season as last year, he's not finishing number 1 with a bullet like he has the last 3 years.
Yeah. I think this could be the year he learns to, and I don't think he doesn't trust his teammates, but I think the year that Jake or that we see Allen and the Bills kind of get to that next level is when he understands he doesn't have to do everything himself.
Yeah, but that's bad for fantasy because
I know.
He's not going to get the same rushing touchdowns, and that's what elevates his floor. That's why he's been the number 1.
I know. But I do think he's going to sling the ball more in the next couple of years than he has previously.
Yeah, but he had, like I say, he had better receivers last year. So now you're replacing Stephon Diggs with Keon Coleman. I love Keon Coleman. Love his personality. He's not as good as Stephon Diggs.
No, but I do think sometimes you see guys get confidence in what they're capable of when they don't have a superstar like a Stephon Diggs in their lineup. Because I think they get cocky with it.
I don't view Josh Allen as a Tom Brady-esque figure that elevates all of the players around him.
I don't think he's elevating them. I think he gets a newfound confidence in himself. I think that's a different thing.
But he already plays that way, is what I'm saying. To change the way that he plays, he has to get out of bounds, slide more, and trust his teammates to make plays. And I don't see that happening this year.
I mean, he's either going to do that or he's going to get seriously hurt by running too much. In my eyes, he's running the risk.
The other day.
Yeah. All right. We can banter on this all day long, but running back, who do you have? I think this one's obvious.
Not to me. I know you want me to say Christian McCaffrey here, but just because it has happened in the past.
No, it's Chuba Hubbard, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
Local Edmonton boy.
This year, it is Bijan Robinson. And famously, I was out on Bijan last year for the same reason of what I said earlier. When you draft rookies in the first round, you're asking them to break generational rookie records to quantify and qualify their ADP. This year, though, coming off last year, when I watch a guy like Bijan Robinson be as good as he was in a craptacular system like he was in last season, and now you're telling me, oh, we upgraded his quarterback, we got a couple of offensive line pieces, oh, and by the way, we got 3/4 of the Rams coaching staff coming in. Yeah, I'm going to be in on Bijan Robinson this year. You saw what they did with Kyron Williams. Just imagine, and he already said even the Bijan quoted already as saying the Falcons brass here have basically told me I'm going to be in the CMC role this year. So yeah, I'm going to as much as I love CMC and I think CMC is still the obvious answer for redraft, there is a little bit of an injury concern. You always have to have that in the back of your mind. He is getting a little bit older now. But I think Bijan has the potential of a true breakout. And if he's not ahead of Christian McCaffrey, he's going to be right there with him, step by step. So that's one. And I'm going to throw another one at you because I actually think he's going to lead the league in touchdowns. And touchdowns more than anything gets you fantasy points. How did Derrick Henry not get 20 touchdowns with the Ravens?
Right. Yeah. No, I think from a fantasy standpoint, I think CMC is going to be that guy. The one guy who I do hope does well is Isaiah Pacheco. I hope he gets more things. Not because I just like him as a player, but I also own him in a fantasy, so that would be beneficial to me.
He'll definitely get some run. I don't view him as an in fantasy.
I don't think
I'd love to have as my second running back.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be like a guy. I just want him to get more end zone looks because I do think I think that's always been his thing is that if he doesn't score, he can always have that drop that kind of screws with his confidence. I want him to get that confidence and swagger out there. I think an Isaiah Pacheco with swagger is just a damaging tool for the Chiefs that really don't need any more weapons.
I will say for your fans out there, people are sleeping on James Cook. James Cook in the 5th, 6th round is ridiculous value. We just talked about how I expect Josh Allen to not run in 15 touchdowns, and also that they lost their primary wide receiver and that they brought in an offensive coordinator that is designing things around the run. And then people are like, oh, but Ray Davis. Ray Davis is a 4th round pick. You think Ray Davis is coming in to steal all of James Cook's touches? James Cook, by the way, last season was a top 10 running back in PPR, and he only had 6 touchdowns on the year.
Yeah.
And he had 1,500 all-purpose yards. I could see that going up this year. I am in love with James Cook at his current ADP.
Another one who I think if you can get him in the right spot, I think Rachaad White is also a great option too. For not an RB1, but if you can grab him at right value, I do. Baker Mayfield loves giving him the ball, man.
Yeah, I'm wincing because the problem with that is he was extremely inefficient last year. Literally had 270-something touches and still didn't cross 1,000 rushing yards. And a lot of the fantasy points came through the air, and they brought in Bucky Irving, who is kind of like a Darren Sproles type running back. So if you take away even 20, 30 passes from Rachaad White, it's not going to look pretty, especially, again, I'm all about ADP. I'm always about ADP. And
that's what I'm saying. If you can get him at good value, I do think that's a good pick. I'm not going high. If I'm in the 6th round and he's out in there, I'm not grabbing him. I'm hoping to get him in the 8th round.
In the range of like James Cook. That's where I usually see Rachaad White, is right around in that range. Like after the round of Derrick Henry, it's like you kind of get into like James Cook, Rachaad White, Josh Jacobs area. And it's like I would rather have both of those players besides Rachaad White.
Yeah. And I know another guy we haven't mentioned yet from those points is a Mostert. All that guy does is put up points, and I don't see anything changing this year unless you're thinking of acting as another guy who's just going to ball out.
I mean, he's going to have touchdown regression. He's not putting up 20-plus touchdowns again. It's not happening. Count it.
Yeah.
Value. Now, the thing with Mostert is people aren't overreacting to Mostert's season last year of drafting him, and he's still actually going pretty late. So I like him because he still has a value, because I still think he will get 10 to 15 touchdowns and outproduce his current ADP. There's no way he's sniffing last year's numbers. Ain't no way.
No. I think you're foolish on not you specifically, but just as like a normal average person, when a guy has a great year, you're foolish to think he's going to mirror it. I think you have to think regression, but are you okay with that regression? And if so, then value it to what his ADP is. And if that's something that you can get, if you think you're not punching up for, you do it. But if you're punching down for and you get better value, then you've hit something good. But I think you just have to look at logic, and you don't have to look at, well, what if? I think the what if is the dumbest way of drafting in anything.
Well, I mean, it's fine. It's fine if you want to tell yourself the what if, but the what if can't be like some delusional story-based, like magical kind of thinking again of like, oh, this guy's, suddenly going to go from, again, a perfect example is Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is not going for 1,313 touchdowns next year. You know what I'm saying? Like a great season from him is going to be to repeat, maybe have 1,000 yards. If he has another 10 touchdowns, that's fantastic. It's hard to keep doing that year in and year out. That's why so few guys have ever done it.
Yeah, and Brian Thomas Jr. went 10th overall, so Ladd McConkey is still there, so I might have to pick him up.
I would take McConkey over Trey Benson even. I really believe McConkey's going to be like the number one for the Chargers for like the next like 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
He's just so good. Speaking of wide receiver, though, and guys who never repeat, who's not going to be number one this year is CeeDee Lamb. So the guy who will be number one, my pick is Jamar Chase. I think Chase with a healthy Burrow, I think the Bengals are going to have a bounce back season this year. And I think Jamar Chase gets there as number one because you've got Justin Jefferson has a rookie quarterback, CeeDee Lamb. Again, historically, almost nobody. I don't think anybody's ever repeated as number one fantasy wide receiver. So it probably doesn't happen, but I still very high in my rankings. I could see it being AJ Brown. I could see it being Amon-Ra St. Brown. But if I'm just, I could see it being Tyreek Hill, actually. I think people are sleeping on that. Actually, no, I'm going to change my answer. I'm going with Tyreek Hill. As much as I love Jamar Chase, the thing with Chase is Chase just gets it in buckets, and then he'll just go away for a game or two. Like, it'll be a 200-yard game from Chase, and then 50 yards, and, it's a T. Higgins week. So, no, I'm going to go with Tyreek again. I think Tyreek, he's so unguardable in that system because it's like he's going to get loose at some point because at some point you're going to have to guard the running backs and Jalen Waddle and whatever else. And if you add in, if Malik Washington hits on this team, I don't think people realize how ridiculous the Dolphins potential could be with if Malik and Jalen Wright, if both of those guys hit also, like those guys both run like 4.3 40s. So when you're now talking about, I've got Tyreek, I've got Jalen Waddle, and I've got Malik Washington in the slot, you got to pick your poison at some point. So if they start just trying to do these soft zone coverages, Tyreek will eat that up. He doesn't care. So you know what? I'm going to go with Tyreek because it also matches my Tua dark horse pick. He's my number one, and then Chase would be my number two.
Yeah, if I was in a dark horse for quarterback, I forgot to mention this, but I think if he's healthy and he's willing to go at week one, I can never count out Joe Burrow. I just feel like he's the guy I can never count out. Yeah. Him and Chase is just a disgusting pairing. And I don't hate that. But
that's why my first thought was Chase, because I feel like it was ruined by injury last season. And before that, it's like he had his rookie season, his sophomore season, and it's like injuries to Burrow, especially. So it's like, and Chase dealt with his own injuries too. So I do think he could have like a crazy, like huge season, but the guy that I just feel like does it more consistently is Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. And at what point though do you think Tyreek Hill is going to regress? Because he is going to have that. Yeah. At one point it's going to happen though.
No, I think Tyreek leaves the game before that happens. I don't know that he's going to retire at the mark that he said, like 3 years and I'm done, because I think that puts him at 29. But I don't see him being the kind of guy that clings on past 32. So I think you get pretty much close to maximum Tyreek for the rest of his career.
I mean, that's just scary if he can be Mr. Consistent all the way through, because a Tyreek at 100% is just
it's underrated because, again, people see the speed and stuff. They don't recognize his skills as a true wide receiver all the time of like, he's an excellent route runner. He has great hands. Like there's a reason he, will have like 7 to 9 receptions a game from Tua. It's not just because he's blowing guys over the top. It's because he's so fast in space that if you try to play zone coverage, he's going to find those open spots and just kill you.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, when you get a guy that fast with hands that good, it still blows my mind that Kansas City got rid of that guy at any point. Like, it's so weird that, and what's even more weird is that they've won more championships without him than they did with him. Like, that's crazy to me.
And that's the thing, is because financially they couldn't make it work. And it's because as much as Tyreek Hill is like a huge luxury for them and made them like crazy good, the truth is slowing the pace of the game and playing defense, that's championship football. And so if you're going to pay players on the team, it's like, you're going to pay Mahomes, you're going to pay Kelsey and the defense. And that was the big thing, was they wanted to be able to pay Chris Jones a big contract, and you weren't going to be able to afford Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey, and then also to pay the defense. So there had to be a sacrificial lamb, and it was Tyreek Hill because wide receiver contracts are so bloated. Like he would have been close. He would have been pretty close almost to like the Mahomes deal even. So it's like having those two bloated contracts really affects your ability to roster the rest of the team that you need because there's still a whole defense you got to field.
Yeah. Now going for tight end, I think this one's going to be pretty similar. I'm going Tyreek Hill as well. That was my guy. Changed, and I was like, oh, we're not going to be any different. I do think Jamar Chase, if Burrow does go, is a great option. I do think we won't see Justin Jefferson in that top spot because I just don't believe in JJ McCarthy as much as I believe in Kirk Cousins. And yeah, that's a stretch, I think.
I like McCarthy, but again, historically, no rookie quarterback has ever had the number one fantasy wide receiver. There's been outliers where most of the time actually even a stud wide receiver will have not their best season when it's a rookie quarterback. And like outliers like Steve Smith and stuff will get like 1,000-yard season, but there's never been someone to finish as number one with a rookie quarterback. And as much as I like JJ McCarthy and I like the pick for the Vikings, no, I don't see it for fantasy, especially like year one. But for tight end, for me, it's Travis Kelce. I mean, it's Travis Kelce till he retires.
Yeah. I do think if I was going to go anywhere else, I do like Mark Andrews. I do like all he does is Mr. Consistent for Lamar, and I do like that one. But at the same time, with the Derrick Henry, I do feel there's going to be a lot of red zone targets that maybe go to the running backs or to even just Lamar himself. And I think they use Andrews more of as a decoy opposed to the actual target. So, but just for that, like I'm with you. I do Kelce as well. But yeah, I really hope that there's someone else, not a Laporta, not an Andrews, not a Kelce, that maybe gives Kelce some run for his money on a fantasy end because it'd be nice to see something different. But probably won't happen.
Earlier, the only guy I really have projected is making that leap. You're drafting him in about the 10th round this year, 9th, 10th round, and potentially next year you're going to be forced to draft him up with the McBrides and the Laportas. It's Fergie-licious, baby. Jake Ferguson, Dallas Cowboys. I'm telling you, they added nothing to the offense. Like, you look at it, he basically has the exact same situation as Sam Laporta, if you think about it. He's got a competent quarterback. He's got a true number one wide receiver to take some of the heat off of him, and he's basically the second target in that offense. The only other guy you can even point to is Brandon Cooks. And now they lose their running backs, and you have old Zeke back there. Like, it feels like they're just going to throw the ball even more. So, yeah, Fergie-licious, baby.
Yeah. No, and I hope he does well because I have a potential trade for him, but we'll see.
Nice.
Like you just.
Oh, here's a good one. If you have Dallas Goedert out there, go see if you can trade Dallas Goedert and like a pick, like a second or third round pick, or like a pick swap. Like if you're sending a second, it's a little high. Maybe get like Jake Ferguson in a 4 for Dallas Goedert in a 2. Because if you can do that, Dallas Goedert in his entire career has never surpassed like 60 receptions, 800 yards, or 5 touchdowns. Like, he's so mid. And he's old now too, but he's still on the Eagles and people still value him purely on name value and the team. But like, I would much rather have Jake Ferguson in a dynasty league. And if I need to fleece them with a pick to do it. So again, Dallas Goedert in a 3rd for Fergie-licious straight up. Or if they're like, no, I'll be like, what about if I send a second, you send me a 4? Pick swap 2 to 4 and I get Fergie-licious. I would do that all day.
Yeah. we're gonna have to do this again because I feel like there's a lot of football stuff we can still talk about, but we are over the 2-hour point, which is the longest we've ever gone. So, and I still have another show to do later today, so I'm gonna have to pace myself. But Jack, I just want to say thank you so much. Not only are you fun to have on the show, but I feel like just getting to know you, we could easily crush some beers talking football with each other. Might have to do that one day. We'll see. But yeah, no, let everybody know what you have going on, where the people can find you, and yeah, what's going on in the world of Jack and with this world's worst sports channel. I'll say world because let's make you global.
I'll be the world's worst. No, I've got a show actually later tonight, so make sure you guys join in. Hit that subscribe button to get notified. We are going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. And we're talking. It's the fantasy show, worst fantasy show, with my guy Hoove at HooveTube on Twitter, and we're talking stacks on stacks on stacks. So the whole show is going to be dedicated to stacks. We're talking stacks. What are stacks? Strategies for stacks. Are they overrated? Are they good? Do they help you win? And then we're going to actually go in and talk about some different stacks like Mahomes, Kelsey, Goff, Laporta, that kind of thing. Dive a little deeper into, are they worth it at their average draft position? Like, which ones do you want? And if we have time at the end, we might take some fan questions, talk about the Fantasy Football Expo coming up. So yeah, make sure you guys come and join the live later tonight at 7 p.m. Just look up Jack Lucenay on YouTube.
Awesome. And yeah, in case you were wondering what I have else going on today, people, if you want to check out the Throwbacks Twitch channel as well as the Round Table, you'll be able to see me alongside them for the NXT Battleground watch along as we review and we enjoy Battleground tonight. It's going to be a great show, and let's see if we see something historic with that crossover between the WWE and TNA. And for everyone, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to spend here on the Sundays with Chris Perish podcast. My name has been Chris Perish. Your guys' names have been audience because I don't know everyone on a personal level, and it's just funny. But no, thank you so much, Jack. Again, once again, I say thank you. And everyone, have a great rest of your Sunday. And for always, go Saints. I wanna pull the string.